Hello and welcome to News Central Exclusive, where we engage in insightful conversations with influential figures shaping our world today. I'm your host, Oby Ezekwesili, and today we have an exceptional guest, one of Africa's foremost advocates for good governance, economic reform, and education, Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. Dr. Oby, as some people like to call you. It's such a joy to have you here.
Lovely to be
So
here.
let me do a proper introduction. Dr. Ezekwesili is a renowned Nigerian economic policy expert, a fierce advocate for good governance, and an unwavering champion of human capital development. She has previously served as the Vice President of the World Bank's Africa region, overseeing the bank's operations across 48 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. She was also a key player in the founding of Transparency International, where she served as a pioneer director, championing for global anti-corruption efforts. In her distinguished career, Dr. Ezekwesili has also served as Nigeria's Minister of Solid Mineral, as well as one-time Minister of Education. In addition to her work in government, she founded initiatives like Fix Politics and Human Capital Africa, which are dedicated to empowering citizens and driving systemic change. Her contributions to Nigeria's political and economic landscape have been profound, and we'll use the next 1 hour to delve into her perspectives on the current state of the country and the way forward. Again, Dr. Ezekwesili, it's an honor to have you with us on NC Exclusive today.
Thank you so much, Oby. I was just trying to remember when last you and I sat down to an interview, and you said 2019.
That was 2019 when you
Incredible.
were contesting to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Incredible.
And somehow there were loads of Nigerians that I know that were saying, we wish you will have the first female president and that it will be Oby Ezekwesili. But I guess we'll have to wait till sometime soon when we'll see you as president of Nigeria.
I didn't realize that you've become a prophet, Oby.
Well, let me start from the fact that this is the International Women's Week.
Yeah.
And during the course of the week, a lot of things happen. But one of those things that has really affected the national polity has been the conversation about Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduagan. She was recently suspended by the Senate for 6 months. She has described the suspension as illegal and insists she remains a legitimate senator. The whole situation around her allegation and the investigation into her conduct on the floor of the Senate has become mired in controversy. Do you think the Senate followed due process, especially considering the fact that during your time in government, they call you Madam Due Process?
It really is one of the saddest things that we have seen in our democracy, to have witnessed the last couple of days of what I call democratic aberration, that the Senate, being the upper house of our parliament, has engaged itself in. I do think that if you peeled through the things that at least evident to us, and the things that we know by virtue of reading what the Senate says are its processes. One thing that comes out very clear is that there has been a modeling up of the issues of rules and orders, and as the case may be, and a pretension that rules of the Senate agreed by senators to be guided by in the procedural business of running the parliament have assumed ascendancy above the law of the land. One thing that became quite clear is that following the outburst of Senator Akpoti-Uduagan some days ago, she may have felt that she was not likely to get justice from the ethics committee, having seen that staffers of the Senate president immediately went online and began to discredit her, and actually, basically defame her. And so here she was, saying that any attempt at saying she was going before a committee when the Senate president's team was already online and passing judgment on her was not going to give her justice. And so the case that she filed asking for a restraining order on the committee means that a superior level of the justice mechanism had kicked in. So the rules of the Senate would have to respond. That's why we have three arms of government. At those three arms, there's equality established, and yet there is a cooperation that is assumed. So the Senate ought to have, at that point in time, at least allowed that process so that she could then ultimately go before them. So she said that the reason she did not go was that the restraining order had already been granted. And so the Senate committee saying she did not appear are wrong to say that she refused to appear. She was compelled not to appear. They disregarded. So those who talk about due process, in their own case, they disregarded the judicial grant of a restraining order and went ahead to actually have a process that does not match the standard.
Let me take you up on that one. I'm thinking, how do we get to a point where for many years we have a situation where we always complain about the fact that the executive, the office of the president under Buhari and different government before him, including this current one, seem to disregard the judiciary. And now we're seeing a situation where even the National Assembly, the Senate in this particular case, has completely ignored the judiciary. And yet, we mouth the words, the courts or the judicial system is the last hope of the common man.
I don't think any Nigerian common man believes that slogan anymore. I think we underestimate what our variant of politics has done to us as a people. We have had a political system and process that basically has enabled the worst amongst us to bubble up to the top and control the infrastructure of governance. And so what has happened is that the judiciary has not in any way been fortunate to stand in integrity. The judiciary that you and I knew when we were growing up was peopled by the likes of Justice Kayode Shaw, Adefarasing, Justice Adefarasing, Justice Oputa. They just stood out. We knew what to expect. Even though you and I grew under military rule, we still knew that these justices, they had no time for any kind of bad behavior. They were not enablers of bad behavior. But what then has happened over time with our political process is that the more banditry we saw within the process of our democracy, the more the entry into it raised a barrier, very strong barrier, against a certain quality of thought and pedigree. And so we now have, what I frankly call a criminal enterprise gang, that the first thing they did was to assault all the systems of governance so that they could capture the state. So we're in a state capture situation.
Gang, are they the
politicians are the criminal enterprise
elite
gang.
politicians?
We need to admit it.
Are they part of a specific political party?
No, they look, I've said it. All you need to do is to take a Nigerian politician and just with evidence, because you know me, I always say that in God we trust. Every other person must bring data. So take each of the prominent Nigerian politicians and map their user journey in terms of which political affiliations have they had since the dawn of our democracy. And you would find that you can't place them. You can't put them in some ideological, platform, because they don't have any. So these guys are migratory fellows who have tasted all kinds of political platforms. These are just platforms. They are for convenience. And so when I talk about the political class of Nigeria, I always stress that we don't have a political party problem. We have a political class problem. They are an undifferentiated breed of people who always find common ground. They are bound by the culture, the political culture of subordinating the common good of society to their own interests. And so whether it's their individual interests or their collective interests, when they find that fusion, what you see is brigandage behavior. So we do have to admit this. I have said this so often. And then, some Nigerians initially quarreled with it when I would say, come on, guys, we've got the two dominant parties. I called them many years ago. I said that they are the twin Siamese, the Siamese twins of bad governance. Yeah. And some of them were so upset. They were trying to prove that they are so different. But there's no difference. And so the mental and the political culture that they have shown is that nothing is sacred. And therefore, our judiciary has suffered assault from all ends of the political spectrum because the only thing that drives them is to access power just for the sake of power. Look at us as a country. We go from one election cycle to another with nothing in between. Like, they actually do not feel any sense of remorse. That what was the, let's even say, incremental progress that was made between one time and the other. And there is no consequence for it. So in that kind of a political context, it was bound to happen that they began to look at the rest of society as a bunch of, stupid people who cannot do anything to us. The behavior we saw them put up at the Senate, in this whole saga that we've witnessed, shows clearly an absolute contempt for the Nigerian people. Because how could they even assume that all of us sitting at home watching the kangaroo thing that happened at the Senate were in any way persuaded by their constant refereeing that they were following the rules of the Senate?
I will definitely want to dwell a little bit more into that one. I'd like us to have a little bit more conversation about that, because a lot of people have expressed a lot of concern about the way this has happened, and we also need to tidy up some loose ends with regards to conversation regarding Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduagan. But we'll take a short break. So when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. You're still here with us on NC Exclusive with Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. Don't go away.
Well, you asked for it.
And News Central has delivered. You asked for it.
And News Central has delivered.
You asked for it. And we delivered.
You asked for it?
Now you've got it.
Yes, News Central is live on GoTV Channel 23. Get the latest news and headlines from Nigeria and across the world. With GoTV, News Central gives you major stories and breaking news on politics, business, sports and entertainment at your fingertips. Welcome to fearless reporting like no other. You asked for it. And now you've got it. News Central on GoTV Channel 23.
Jasiri is where the conversation starts. We amplify diverse voices and challenge narratives.
Bringing societal issues to the fore. This is where everyone has a voice.
That perception that I have your type at home, actually four of your type at home, it starts to shift just because you are like, well, this my type is right here.
Exactly.
We break barriers and bridge generational divides.
So who is going to make Gen Z believe that it is giving?
I love it. She said it.
To speak your native language.
Silence is not an option.
We are unconventional, but unique. Brace yourselves.
I had no holes in my ear until I was 14 years old.
And now how many do you have?
I have holes in places you don't want to.
Join us weekdays at 10 a.m. right here on News Central.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
You're still watching News Central exclusive conversation with Dr. Oby Ezekwesili. So back to where we were, but I will take one step forward. Some have argued that the suspension of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduagan was politically motivated. And others said it wasn't politics, it was just a case of shutting down a woman that seemed to them, seemed to be overreaching herself by challenging what they consider as constituted authority, which is resident in the seat of the Senate President. What's your thought?
I don't know about the politically motivated, but I think that, based on what we have heard clearly, there had been series of clampdown that Senator Akpoti-Uduagan felt was going on. She felt that she increasingly was finding a very narrow space for expressing herself, and that it had gotten to a place where the only thing that was available to her was what we saw of her outburst on the day that she got into a words with the Senate President. Now, when you look at the things she said had happened, she had been moved out from being chair of a committee. She had, bills that she needed to schedule. She had a couple of other things like important global events that she should ordinarily have been part of the delegation. So she felt like there were privileges that were being denied her. And we were not aware of all of this as Nigerians. We didn't know what was going on in the Senate until we saw that outburst on television. And frankly, with that outburst on television and what subsequently followed, especially for me, the fact that there was not a professional response to what we had seen. I was waiting to hear more. And so at the time they said they were going to have the conversation at the Ethics and Privileges Committee, I was interested in what would happen. And then, of course, we know what followed. What followed was her not, her not going because of the court judgment that had been granted for the committee not to hold her before them, and they disrespecting that and going ahead and tabling some report in the absence of her own side of the story to the committee. So it was kind of, beginning to look like a kangaroo situation was emerging until we got that spectacle where the Senate president was in Senate and presiding over a matter with somebody that had not yet been heard. And all we heard were voices of various senators, frankly, assaulting the senator. Senator Akpoti was sitting in that chamber, and each senator, all of them men, got up, told all kinds of stories, personal stories that were debasing a woman, an equal, because they all got elected by their constituencies. A senator like them, the Senate president having no form of superiority over Senator Akpoti-Uduagan, other than the fact that he's the first amongst equals. So we saw that. It is what we saw that we should, take on the table, as well as what's written. And between what we saw and what is written, it became clear that Senator Akpoti-Uduagan was calling our attention by the petition by the interview she granted, where she first said, the reason that I have been going through all of this is because I turned down an indecent proposal from the Senate president. Oh dear, that's an entirely new material information for us as a society. So at that point, people are left saying, okay now, so there are undercurrents that are even deeper than the matter of a senator who felt that she was undercover with their other 10 to speak from anywhere on a matter that she considered priority. So with all of these, if we connected all the dots, and then landed on the core issue now, it is that there is a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a woman who fought tooth and nail to be elected, one of only 4. Nigeria is 3% of women in parliament. It's the lowest in Africa, with Rwanda at 61. It's a show of shame that Nigeria is 3%. Now, of your 3%, one of them is saying to society, I was sexually harassed by the Senate president, who in the abuse of his power is now punishing me for having the audacity to reject his proposition. Now, if we had that as a people, what do you think we would ask for? We would ask for an independent investigation. We would not expect the Senate president to be telling us what what is and what is not, because now he is a party to to an issue.
So if Senator Godswill Akpabio was here today and you're looking at him eye to eye, what would you, because I know you're a very blunt person, you speak it as it is, what would you be saying to him?
I would say to him, you have conducted yourself irresponsibly. You cannot be the Senate president who is being accused, and you sat in Senate and you were receiving all those adulation. Meanwhile, the woman who has said you harassed her is made a victim, you know, by all of you. We don't yet say that, oh, we are sure that this happened. All that any reasonable Nigerian would say is, can an independent investigation happen so that these two people would provide the allegation and the counter from the person who is being accused? That is what due process is about. But the Senate president presided over a Senate session in which he, the accused, was being adored. Look at that genuflecting sycophancy. It was so sickening that happened amongst all those men on that day. Just everybody was determined to slam her. They all had their machete to brutalize the woman. And because they felt that they had the power behind them to do that, a Senate president who allowed that has abused in fact, he's mangled our democratic culture. And so he needs to understand that those of us who are saying this is wrong and this cannot happen or be permitted by our society to happen are in fact those who realize how the poor examples that public leadership has shown is the reason that Nigeria finds itself unable to recognize the difference between vices and values anymore. It's all completely broken down.
So on the one hand, some people online, especially on Twitter, said they can forgive, maybe the word is not forgive, they can let go of those men that seem to have brutalized verbally Senator Akpoti-Uduagan. But the one that worries them the most is the one that they described as making reference to an American leader, a female leader, that said that there's a special place in hell for women who do not support.
Madeleine Albright,
yes, Madeleine
whom
Albright.
I was very privileged to have been a mentee of.
Yes, she said that there is a special place in hell, so much hotter, for women who do not support women. So what do you say to the likes of Ireti Kingibe, who signed that 6-month suspension in a situation where she's aware that there is a court document that says this suspension should not have taken place because there shouldn't even have been a hearing which she did not attend because of that court sitting? And what would you say to the likes of Madam Bakassi, Florence Itagiwa, as well as Senator Itagiwa, who also had something to say about this? What do you say to those women, as a woman to woman?
So I would say to them, you totally lost the plot. They lost the plot in the way that they have responded to this issue. Those amongst Nigerian women, and I don't know if you saw the statement by the women in Nigeria under the Womanifesto platform, or more than 340 or so organizations run by women all came together and said, you know, we're against this. We do need that the due process of the law be followed. We have to have an independent investigation we have to strive for the highest standard of transparency and disclosure. We have to ensure that the right of a woman is not infringed simply because she's a woman. We detest the fact that there is almost a gang up to frustrate her and to take her voice from her. And we also said that it is important that the Senate President not preside over a matter in which is a party. So when you look at what we've said, we have not passed judgment. The women have not passed judgment and said, oh yes, Senator Akpoti-Uduagan is correct in her assertion, because we don't know. What we've basically said is there is a criminal clause to the VAP, that is the Violence Against Persons Act, and that makes a provision on the matter of sexual harassment. It's a crime. It's a crime that has to be investigated and properly prosecuted. So don't treat it as if it were some family, even at family level, you know. So if a woman would have an opinion on this, it would be to have the reasonable opinion of saying, surely this sister must be heard. They haven't done that. What they have done is they have infantilized Senator Akpati, who, you know, I look forward to the younger generation taking the space of public leadership. We can't infantilize them. We can't say because they are younger than us, we're somehow so wise that they should.
Not in a club.
My goodness, I mean, this is, it was horrific to hear the kind of, you know, this mummification approach of saying that because a young woman is younger than me, therefore they are not wise. Who said so? I've seen very, very, very unwise 70-year-olds.
I want to believe that you're probably, at one point or the other, have been close or have known Senator Ireti Kingibe. I don't know whether you have a relationship whatsoever with Senator Florence Itagiwa, but let's assume that you know Senator Ireti Kingibe by virtue of the fact that she's in Abuja and you spend a lot of time in Abuja apart from traveling the world. If you were to run into her, what would you say about the fact that the likes of Senator Oji Uzor-Kalu did not sign that 6-month suspension, but she signed it as a woman?
You know, with Nigeria, it's hard to know some things. We've seen that signature and I was shocked. I was shocked. I said, if even after the feedback that the society gave to Senator Kingibe on her interview on Arise, where she left the issue and sort of was really personalizing too much. And that's one of the things that we don't need in the governance space. This personalization, I see it all the time. People say things on the basis of evidence, and you know, somebody can say that we lack transparency in so and so. Oh, the reason they say we lack transparency is because they don't like us. Who is talking about liking you? Governments, governance, institutions, public institutions, they don't lend themselves to personalization. So when in that interview, it was more personal than it was really getting to the issues that were important for society to know. It worried me. But then to see that she being a member of that committee, and then knowing that they were going to bring a report to the Senate, and that was the day that not one of the 3 other women showed up in Senate. Come on. Come on. I'm sorry. You know, for those of us who see clearly that we will not get to the level of prosperity, stability, cohesiveness that other contemporary countries that we started off the development journey with have gotten. If we do not understand how to value the contribution of our women in the development process, you know, for me, knowing that this is not just about Senator Akpoti-Uduagan, but that it's about the whole construct that has perpetuated an attitude of disdain toward the essence of girls and women in the development of society, the structures and the systems that have entrenched, creating barriers to their optimization of contribution, whether it's in terms of access to education, access to health services, economic participation and opportunities, political representation. We have seen that under these 4 pillars, that societies that don't pay attention to them are at the lower rung of the development table. So to that extent, when I see people like Senator Iretikingibe miss an opportunity to really assert, we're not saying if a woman has been silly and the evidence exists, so go ahead and say we're all women, therefore no. But this is a very clear case of professionalism or the lack of it. And I think she failed to show professionalism.
Okay, so what do you say to the Nigeria's First Lady who suggested women should raise themselves to prevent unwanted advances? Do you think this perspective shifts the responsibility of preventing sexual harassment onto women as against it being something that should be shifted to the men who choose to perpetrate this particular
I think she was being economical with the truth, because I assume that she would need to go watch the tape of what happened between her and a fellow member of the Senate, right? Some years ago. I wonder what conduct she put up that earned her the kind of very trashy talk that we heard from her male counterpart. I think enough said. But I would actually ask her, in the position that she has, to try and learn. She needs to go read about this issue of sexual and gender-based violence, because it is a problem globally. But societies that have really paid attention and sought the kinds of policies and the legal provisions, as well as the institutional mechanisms, and even more important, exemplary behavior, modeling the kind of conduct that we should see in public spaces and in private spaces, within families. Those societies that have paid attention have been able to address it. Globally, it is said that 1 out of every 3 women have been harassed or sexually violated in one way or the other. So to say that the onus and the full responsibility for avoiding being harassed, is deposited in the woman, that is being clever by half.
What do you say to a lot of young ladies online who are clearly saying this is the reason why a lot of us don't want to go into politics?
I know.
In just a few sentences so that we can go for a break, and when we come back, we continue the conversation.
You don't allow your traducer to win. You can't allow them, you can't simply just throw in the towel. You go for a fight. This is the time to fight. The quality of the thinking that we have in our governance space is why Nigeria is the way it is. So if you want to live forever with this quality of thought, that's when you give up. that's when you give in. I would say to these young ones, and their fears, I love their voice. I love their strength. Now they need to understand how to work their numbers. They shouldn't give in.
Okay, so finally, before we take this break, I just have to chip this in. I read on Twitter just recently where some of the young ladies that I do follow and listen because they're very strong voices online, they were saying that 80%, and I don't know where they got their statistics from.
Right.
They said 80% of the people that we have in the National Assembly are not particularly intelligent, especially the men. But somehow they found themselves there, and we need to change them. That's what the young ladies are saying. What do you say to them?
You know,
do you believe that 80%
I would commission, frankly, I would like to join them and commission a study into this, because as I told you, in God I trust, every other person must bring data. So it would be a great idea to look at it. But if we looked at the antecedents of a number of the people that are sitting in the National Assembly, or the people who dominate our political space, we would tend to agree until we establish through data that there is a problem. The quality of thought, a country cannot grow beyond the quality of thought of the people in its National Assembly, in its executive, in its judiciary. So the young women are definitely on the right track of inquiry. We now need to establish that. But even more important is that, Plato said that those who think that politics is beneath them will, in the long run, be ruled by their inferiors.
So the worst of us are likely to be the one leading the best of us.
Because the best of us are busy saying politics is beneath us. And I used to be one of those fools. Yes.
You used to be.
I used to
now
be.
You're
when I was in the government of President Obasanjo, I hated anybody associating me with politics. Once you became a federal minister, you were considered as the leader of the party in your state. When they came from my state to say, I said to them, better get out of here. I have nothing to do. I came here to just do some technical work, and I'll be gone very soon. So one of you should just play that role. That was foolish. I should never have done that. Okay. So our young women should be active in politics. The greatest barrier to the participation of women in politics, as we have identified, as you know, I am chair of the Women Political Leaders in Brussels. It's based in Brussels, but it brings together political leaders that are women, presidents, prime ministers, parliamentarians. And what we've discovered is that the greatest barrier is political parties. Political parties are the gatekeepers shutting young people and women out of politics. Okay. And it is a problem to be addressed.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll take a short break again, but when we return, we'll delve into pressing national issues, including governance and economic reforms. So please do stay with us. Don't go away.